Despite his current stature within the gaming industry, there's something unassuming about Hidetaka Miyazaki, and it isn't just his modestness in a rare interview. As the director for Dark Souls and most of its siblings, he's had an indelible influence on the games, and they in turn have grown massively in their own right. Interviews with some of the dev team for the game speak as much to his hands-on approach, where his word is the final word in every aspect. From level layouts and character ideas to music and sound effects, it's all got his stamp on it. There's a dedication there seemingly unlike that of most people, and I certainly admire his passion. And clearly the man isn't silent, but both his reticence and meticulousness are not only reflected by that quote, but also by the game itself. If something is well and truly realized to the fullest, there's no need for anything superfluous. Rather, Dark Souls does a superb job of telling you everything you need to know about its world and how to navigate its treacherous battles and brutal environments without ever shoving it in your face. So much of the experience is understated despite the grandness of the spectacle. Not only that, but it respects the intelligence of the player, and as a result, it completely earned my attention. It's quite funny then that despite all of that, both Miyazaki and the game he directed are far from silent. Dark Souls has an incredibly strong sense of self, and represents itself through nearly everything it does, not least of which is its gameplay and everything it conveys, namely that of a cycle of death, despair, and resilience. So Dark Souls is very much a game that overall is quite high in its level of challenge. Internet arguments and rationalizations aside, there's no denying that the game, while incredibly open in some ways, does not necessarily have the casual gamer's interests at heart. And I say casual not in a derogatory way whatsoever. I only mean it in the sense that comparatively you cannot sit down and play this game like you would a quick, lighthearted session of Rocket League with some friends. It just requires more forethought than that. Yet, difficulty is always at the crux of the discussion when it comes to Dark Souls. It's the most touted part of the entire game, yet if this game is so hard, why would anyone want to play it? Sure, the game teaches you as you go along, and this is another highly praised and discussed facet of the series, but plenty of games also do this in their own way, and I feel this assessment, as interesting as it may be when you look to specific examples, is somewhat incomplete. So, what then has driven and continues to enthrall players into conquering the terrors of Lordran? Well, the answer lies in the system the gameplay utilizes. Dark Souls is reliant upon the player to substantiate its beautiful, twisted world. Nothing inherent about the way the world looks or behaves changes throughout your time exploring it. Rather, it is the endless cycle of death, lost souls, and eventual victory tied to your character that changes and continually affects the narrative. Let's focus in on the essence of this game though, the idea of souls as a consumable currency. As you continually journey forward, you'll gain more and more souls, which are then used to level up, purchase items, and upgrade your equipment. Seeing as every enemy in the game releases a set amount of souls to you upon their death, at which point resting at a bonfire resets the world, bringing them back to life, there's a never-ending amount of souls to reap. The only dependencies are the amount of time you're willing to invest, and your capacity to be patient in the face of adversity. And, well, I guess how much essence you have in reserve, but there will inevitably come a time where you've amassed a stunning amount of souls only to be vanquished, and that's a huge bummer. Now, upon death, the souls you'd previously attained will be left in a pile, waiting patiently for you to reclaim them. But if you're making your way back to that spot and die again, all the effort you spent acquiring those souls is scattered to the wind, and that's the real soul crusher. Say this exact scenario has just played out. You've now made no physical progress as you've been returned to the last bonfire you rested at, and it's at this point that mental exhaustion sets in. Because let's face it, it's hard to invest so much time only to see a big fat 0 in the corner of your screen. And hopefully you've at least learned something from your mistakes, but that's again a byproduct of any game where you're bound to repeatedly fail. Souls is different in how there is always a penalty for death. You will always feel the effects of death within the game. There's no, oh, I died again, I guess I have to start 30 seconds back. The marketing campaign didn't say prepare to die for no reason. Their aim was to implant the idea that there's far more permanence in death than a simple hand wave. Dark Souls forces itself upon you, not only provoking you into making mistakes out of fear of losing your hard-earned souls, but further imposing a sense of helplessness and dread unlike any game I've ever played. And this mimics one of the ideas behind the game's narrative, which is brought clear into understanding by the finale. It is at this point that I'm going to reveal the ending, so if you don't want to know what happens, avert your ears. Now, this climactic battle has stuck with me since I first played through the game, and I've been dying to talk about it in some capacity ever since. It takes place in the Kiln of the First Flame, a hallowed place where Gwyn, Lord of Cinder, has been guarding the primordial fire, waiting to die at the hands of any challenger daring enough to have made the journey. In this case, these hands belong to you, the chosen undead, and upon extinguishing the last embers of Gwyn's soul, you're left with a choice to make: either rekindle the first flame and take Gwyn's place, or let the flame die and plunge the world into an age of darkness. Neither choice sounds particularly great. Through your journey, you see the state Lordran is in, and darkness will only usher in more troubles. But if you sacrifice yourself, you merely become the new Gwyn, a shell waiting to be slain by the next unfortunate soul. To hammer the futility of this moment home, no matter the choice you make, you're always returned to a new game, where the end goal is the same as before. Now, music is an extremely potent device for mood building and storytelling, and throughout Dark Souls, the tracks that play in the more significant encounters are brooding, heavy, and majestic. They capture the intensity of every battle and help to push you towards victory because of how epic they feel. The theme for Gwyn, then, comes as somewhat of a shock to the senses because it's at odds with everything we've come to expect. While previous tracks are grandiose, this one is completely driven by a haunting piano melody, and it's in these moments that you finally start to ponder: is what I'm doing right? Was this all worth it? In one sense, it feels out of place for the final fight of such a monumental journey, and yet when you consider our foe, it fits perfectly. Gwyn, having been the one who led the fight against the dragons and in turn led the world to its current state, has now suffered the consequences of his actions. He is merely a hollow, doomed to a life of unending servitude to the fire. Even in his death and your victory, again, your choice returns you to a new game, and it's not just you who is reset. Gwyn is immediately returned to his post in the kiln. Much like you, he cannot escape his fate. And the worst part is, you can't adequately think upon your actions in the moment and allow the song to completely wash over you. Not only is there no cutscene there to properly usher in the fight, another key aspect that hammers this futility home, but Gwyn is aggressive and will relentlessly seek you out. This theme then not only perfectly encapsulates Gwyn and his fate, but that of your fate and the entire game's message. In some way, life is pointless. You will forever be stuck in a loop you cannot escape, a fate beyond your control. There is no happy ending, and there are no handouts. Only death and despair. But I still haven't quite answered that initial question. If all this holds true, why would anyone willingly play this game and endure such trials? Everything is pointless is a fairly heavy and general assertion to make, yet that hasn't stopped anyone from doing anything. Ever. So the decision at the end of the game is pointless, and everything you've done up to this crossroads is also rendered pointless because of the ultimate outcome. Yet, we're still left with a choice to make at the end, and painful as it may be, we must make it. The game won't make it for us, and so this continues to parallel everyday life. Because there are plenty of decisions no one wants to make in their life. I mean, sometimes I don't even want to get up to make myself food. But we make these choices regardless. We see how the world is, and no matter the lasting effects of our decisions, we make them anyway. I think it all comes down to a simple matter of resilience. There's a part of us that's inherently defiant, not wanting to simply go along for the ride. No matter how much the world tries to tear us down, we fight right back. And this is reflected in every decision you make in Dark Souls. From deciding to play just 30 more minutes to try and reclaim the souls you dropped, to ultimately deciding the fate of Lordran and having to start all over again. Even if a choice seems fruitless in the grand scheme of things, we must assign our own value to them and find our own meaning to life regardless of how pointless it may seem. At some level, we all strive to surmount the challenges laid before us, to get through that tough day and hope for something better tomorrow. I think Dark Souls also communicates this, and it makes me love it even more.